walking through the smoke.
Ladies, clear the area! Get out of the way, clear the area!
And it kind of surprised me, so I knew that there was hope and that there were people out there.
Only 27 people survived the crash.
I had seen death before as a medic in Vietnam, but it had never been aimed at civilians, and certainly not on a mass casualty situation, and certainly not this suddenly. I could tell how bad it was. You could see and smell and feel the death.
We felt like we did everything that we could, and we were just pleased that there were survivors.
I was scheduled to sit on off seat 15A, and I told them that wouldn't be no good because that was a non-smoking section. I was a smoker, so I had to be in back. That probably saved my life.
Captain Connors, First Officer Price, and Second Officer Nassick are killed. So are 5 other crew members and 128 passengers. IBM's Don Estridge and his wife are among the dead.
In the tower, there was silence for probably 1 to 2 minutes, except for just an occasional transmission. But basically, it's just quiet, and you just sit there stunned and wishing you could do anything to take it back.
This is a monumental crash. Investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board arrive at DFW, determined to find the cause.
One of our field investigators would have been on scene trying to locate the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, which is, a very important part of the investigation.
Investigators begin looking for evidence of mechanical failure. They examine the wreckage for clues that the plane was not responding to the pilot's command.
It's essential in any approach or departure accident to establish what the airplane's configuration was, to assure that it was not a factor in the accident, or everything was normal on this aircraft.
Investigators turn their attention away from the plane and to the skies.
After any accident in commercial aviation, there are theories galore. A couple of them prevalent that evening. First, that lightning had struck the airplane. Secondly, that it had been hit by a mini tornado.
There's lightning coming out of that one.
Where?
Right ahead of us.
15 different witnesses, including flight crews, report seeing lightning as Flight 191 was descending towards the runway. The investigators have to consider the possibility that Flight 191 was hit by lightning.
Lightning is always something that you have to investigate to determine the possibility that lightning disabled some part of the airplane.
In 1963, a Boeing 707 was struck by lightning. The lightning ignited the fuel in the plane's tank. The plane crashed. 81 people died. There had been a handful of similar crashes since then. Key pieces of wreckage from Flight 191 are taken to the NTSB lab in Washington, D.C. Bud Lehner is the investigator in charge of examining the wreckage, as well as the data from the plane's cockpit voice recorder.
That sometimes might be very difficult to find to determine where the airplane might have been struck by lightning and where the exit point was.
Lightning coming out of that one. Where? Right ahead of us.
If the plane was hit by lightning, there would be evidence left behind. A device called a static discharge wick is attached to the trailing edge of an airplane's wings. It redirects static electricity into the outside air instead of into the plane, where the charge could cause a fire. If the plane was hit by lightning, one of the pieces that would be visibly damaged is the static discharge wick.
Nothing there.
With lightning ruled out, investigators go looking elsewhere. They would soon discover the real culprit. It had actually been caught on tape. A Delta Airlines L-1011 crashes after entering a storm near Dallas. "137 people die. Investigators rule out mechanical problems and lightning as causes of the crash.
Nothing there.
The NTSB's Bud Lehner turns his attention to the plane just ahead of Delta 191, the corporate Learjet. He learns that it was less than a minute ahead and flew through the very same storm.
After we had passed about 5 miles from the end of the runway, we entered a rain shower, what we thought was a light rain shower, and it turned out to be the heaviest rain I've ever seen before or since.
In spite of the rain, Rufus Lewis managed to land his plane safely on runway 17 left.
When we broke out of the clouds, we were high and hot. So we had to use all of the runway at DFW Airport. We landed, were able to turn off at the end of the runway.
So why was the much larger L-1011 unable to land just moments later? Bud Lehner still doesn't know what slammed Flight 191 into the ground. But soon he finds the clues he needs on the plane's flight data recorder. It logs every adjustment pilots make to the plane's controls. The device also records external elements like temperature, wind speed, altitude, and air pressure. Whatever Connors and Price were fighting, there's a good chance it left its fingerprints on the flight data recorder.
This flight data recorder gave us several parameters we didn't have before. Engine power, longitudinal acceleration, and those kinds of parameters really enabled us to do a more in-depth analysis.
The plane's data recorder has documented a combination of rapidly shifting winds.
Then it shifts to a downdraft.
In a matter of seconds, the plane was hit with strong winds from the front, then from above, and then from behind.
There you have it.
For Bud Lehner, that sequence could only mean one thing: a microburst. A microburst is a violent shaft of air falling from a storm cloud. Back in 1985, few people knew more about encounters between microbursts and airplanes than John McCarthy.
If you're at the kitchen sink and you turn on the water and it goes straight down and it splashes out in all directions. And that's kind of what a microburst is.